There are many versions of this story, but this is a Sufi story. And like all Sufi stories, it contains the 4 levels that stories are able to impart. It has a moral or a teaching. It has the sacred numbers and the archetypes. It has an indication of oneness with those qualities of compassion and pity and empathy. And it has a secret, not recognizable by most, but seen and heard by a few. It's a story of a merchant, and in his travels, coming back from a trading mission, he had to pass through a dense forest. And as he was riding through the forest, he saw a young girl, a waif, picking berries from a bush. And a great wave of compassion came over him, and he stopped his horse and bent down to her in her ragged clothing and said, here are a few coins that you can buy things at the market." And the young girl said, "I have no use for money. I don't know money, and I don't know what a market is. I only know the animals of the forest and the stream nearby and the berries that I eat." And so he asked her, "How did you come to this state?" And she said, "I was stolen from my family's garden. I was playing with my 3 sisters when a group of nomads came by, and they carried me off. But when they were camping by a great cliff at night, I ran away, and I've been taking care of myself since then. But I have to find my way back to my family soon, because it's very lonely here." And then the merchant, whose name was Wal Ali, said, "Well, come, ride with me on my horse. I'll take you back to my house, and we'll take care of you, and we'll try to find your parents." So the young waif, whose name was Quadila, climbed on the merchant's horse, and he took her back to his home. Well, she was welcomed by the family, and dressed and cleaned and fed, and soon she became like one of them, playing with the girls, learning how to sew and cook. Even though they were a noble family, it was necessary for the girls to learn the ways of the household, enable them to be good wives. And time passed, and Quadila grew into a beautiful young maiden, and soon she reached the age of 17, which was a time for young girls to be married. Well, there were thoughts and discussions of this within the family. But then one day, on his ride, a noble prince came by and happened to see Quadila gathering roses from the garden for the table. He instantly became besotted with her, falling in love with her beauty and her grace. And, being a young man of aplomb, he stopped his horse and approached Wal Ali, who of course gave him hospitality, he being a prince of the realm. Well, after they had had their little tea and gone through the rituals that one does giving hospitality, the prince made no bones about it. He said, "I make up my mind very quickly, and I would like to marry your daughter. Would you be gracious enough to give me the hand in marriage?" "Oh," said Wal Ali, "I have 4 daughters. Which one do you mean?" And the prince said, "The one who was carrying the roses from the garden." "Oh, that would be Quadila," said the merchant. "Well, if she's in agreement, you can take her in wedlock." Well, of course, as these things go, Quadila had seen the handsome prince as she was coming in from the garden, and she too had fallen instantly in love. So when she was called and asked would she wed this prince, she readily agreed. But, you know, as the way of such things, because of her grace and beauty and gentleness, the 3 other daughters of the merchant had become jealous of Quadila. They often snickered behind their hands that she was just a waif and a stray, probably a gypsy of some kind from the forest, although they never let that be shown in the family. But when she was taken to be the bride of the prince of the realm, their jealousy knew no bounds, and they became openly vitriolic about her. But Quadila, being the gentle maiden that she was, sensed nothing of this. And so the day when the prince came to claim her, and she was taken back to the palace to be dressed in satin robes and silk for her wedding, nothing was known of this. But we know the way of such things. And soon what the young sisters had been saying behind their hands became general knowledge in the palace and came to the ears of the queen herself. She was very affronted. How could her handsome son be married to a waif and a stray who had no known background? So, before the wedding was to take place, the queen called Quadila to her. Now, dressed in her silken gowns and the jewels that are befitting of a bride to be of a prince, she presented herself to the queen. But instead of being greeted by the smiling face and warmth that she expected, she was greeted by a scowl and a very dour presence. She immediately became somewhat afraid, wondering what it was that she had done. And then the queen told her that it had come to her ears that her background was not known, and that it could be that she was just the child of some wandering nomad, and certainly not befitting to become the bride of a prince of the realm. So she would have to go back to the house of Wal Ali, and the prince would choose amongst the other daughters for a bride. But just as the queen was in the midst of her tirade to Quadila, she stopped in mid-sentence and bent forward and said, "What is that you've got around your neck?" And Quadila removed the leather strap which contained an amulet that hung between her breasts. And Quadila said, "This was placed on my neck by my mother when I was a baby. She told me that I should wear it always because it would give me protection and guidance." Tears began to roll down the face of the queen, and she said, "I would recognize that amulet anywhere. It was one I had made for my very, very best and dearest friend, the husband of a great noble. She and her husband were murdered by bandits some years ago, but they had never recovered from the loss of their small daughter, who had been carried off by a band of nomads. There is no doubt that you are that lost child. Please, please forgive me, my very blessed child," and embracing her, said how pleased she was that the daughter of her beloved friend was to become the wife of her beloved son. If we examine this story, we can, without doubt, find its moral, its teaching, recognize its archetypes and its symbols, and its elements of compassion, love, pity that indicate oneness. Deep in ourselves, we also know the secret it contains. But for the moment, bringing it down to a personal level, what is the meaning of the amulet? What is its significance? Recognizing as we do that all elements of every story are aspects of ourself. What, for us, is the significance, the meaning, that which we know is a representation of something that we have? The amulet. What is it? What does it mean for us? What do we have? That protects and guides us, always present. The key, we know, to the secret, the key that takes us to the inner meaning of every story, every experience, every encounter. What is it? What is this key, this amulet that we have?